Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking three genuinely harrowing accounts that completely strip away that cozy illusion of safety we usually associate with being out in nature. We're going to explore the terrifying escalation of isolation in the woods. We're looking directly at what actually happens when our profound vulnerability is exploited. We'll be walking through three distinct scenarios, each one cranking up the level of physical isolation, just to see how insanely fast a peaceful little getaway can morph into a desperate fight for survival.
Just think about this for a second. Zipping up a thin piece of fabric is your only protection against whoever or whatever is out there in the dark. It's a completely visceral thought, right? It perfectly hooks you into the mindset we're exploring today. You're out in the wilderness, you feel totally secure bundled up inside your tent, but reality check? That illusion of safety is held together by millimeter-thick nylon and a flimsy zipper. Honestly, how fragile is our protection when we're totally isolated? Keep that vulnerability right at the top of your mind as we dive into our first account.
All right, Section 1, the backyard intruder. Let's start with childhood normalcy.
You don't even have to be deep in some remote national forest to experience the absolute terrors of isolation. Sometimes the perimeter of your own home is more than enough. Our source paints this picture of perfect everyday normalcy. You've got a middle sibling, kind of jealous of his older brother Scott's scout trips, so the parents finally cave and let them set up a tent in their massive, unfenced backyard. They're doing typical kid stuff, playing Super Mario Bros. 2 on their Game Boys, zipping up their sleeping bags, drifting off to sleep. But then, deep in the night, the first major red flag drops. The younger brother wakes up, completely disoriented in the dark, and realizes Scott's sleeping bag is just empty. He assumes his brother got spooked and went back inside the house, so he decides to do a quick, innocent peek outside, just to make sure the coast is clear before making a mad dash for the back door.
Now imagine the sheer paralyzing panic of this next moment. He unzips the tent just a tiny bit to peek out, and his heart absolutely drops. Sitting right there by their fire pit in the pitch black of his very own yard is a grown man, and he's facing the tent. The kid instantly zips the flap back up. He's laying there, completely frozen in his sleeping bag, just praying to God this intruder didn't see him. But then, he hears the patio chair shift. A shadow slowly moves around to the other side of the tent, entirely blocking out the moonlight. The man is now standing right outside that impossibly thin nylon fabric.
The suspense here is literally suffocating. The boy's watching in pure horror as the zipper of his tent is dragged downward, so slowly, just a few inches, and peering right through that tiny gap, a single eye presses against the opening, looking directly at him in the dark. He can clearly see the white of the man's eye, and then it squints. It's like the person on the other side is giving him this sickening, twisted smile. That's the breaking point. The boy just completely loses it, screaming at the top of his lungs, kicking violently out of his sleeping bag. That absolute chaos wakes his dad, who flips on the porch light and chases the intruder off into the night.
But here is what brilliantly illustrates the true, lasting horror of this account. That visual scare, the eye looking into the tent, was undeniably terrifying. But it was the sound of this man's voice, weeks later, that really cements the trauma. The source details how, weeks after that night, the boy's at recess at his Catholic school. A man casually walks up to the chain link fence. He asks the kid for directions, gives a little smile, and then the voice of the man drops this bomb. "Your name's Chris, right? You don't remember me, do you?" That auditory intrusion, the terrifying voice of the man who stalked him right in his own backyard, it just shatters any remaining feeling of safety he had left. The visual was a massive scare, sure, but that voice, that was a promise that his isolation wasn't actually over.
Okay, Section 2, the fire lookout tower, trapped 70 feet high.
So we're definitely escalating our level of isolation now. We have two friends, the narrator and his buddy Charles, and they decide to hike out to this abandoned 70-foot steel fire lookout tower deep in an Idaho forest. At first, it is the absolute picture of peaceful isolation. They climb up the zigzagging stairs, set up their sleeping gear in the glass cab way up at the top, and just chill, drinking beers as the sun sets. But the second night falls, that peace is entirely shattered by a terrifying auditory invasion. We aren't talking about normal nature sounds here. Out of nowhere, they start hearing these heavy metallic clangs echoing all the way up that 70-foot steel frame. And that's followed by this horrible grinding noise. It sounds exactly like thick metal being forcefully, violently twisted in the pitch dark.
Let's break down exactly how this threat manifests. Before those awful twisting sounds started, they actually spotted a faint light way down on the forest floor. It was weaving through the trees at a perfect, steady walking pace until it stopped dead, right at the base of their tower. Now, think back to the terrifying voice of the man from our first story. Notice how this situation is the complete opposite?
Up in the tower, riding a burst of drunken confidence, Charles leans over and shouts down into the darkness, "Hey, are you good?" And they get absolutely zero response. Total, dead silence. Sometimes, I gotta tell you, the total lack of a human voice, just the quiet, calculated movements of a predator down in the dark, that is infinitely worse.
Those metallic twisting sounds just keep echoing from different spots on the structure below them. And then we hit the climax of their terror. As they're up there whispering to each other in a full-blown panic, a dark outline moves directly across the exterior glass window of their cab. Really picture this for a second. You are 70 feet up in the air. There's literally nowhere left to climb. The narrator screams and both friends instantly scramble backwards, pressing their backs as hard as they can against the heavy trapdoor. They spend the entire rest of the night trapped in that exact position, hyperventilating in the dark.
So here is the absolutely crucial point, the chilling morning discovery. When the sun finally comes up and they get the courage to leave the cab, they bolt down the stairs to escape. But about 3/4 of the way down, they stop dead in their tracks. An entire section of the heavy steel staircase is just gone, completely missing. That silent saboteur down below hadn't just been making random noises to scare them. They had systematically, quietly deconstructed and removed massive steel stairs in the pitch black for one reason: to trap them up there. It is such a cold, calculated, predatory use of isolation.
Moving into Section 3, the burning cabin, peak isolation. Now, this represents the absolute peak of isolation. We're talking about a solo backpacker miles off the grid in the Cherokee National Forest, desperately looking for shelter during a brutal thunderstorm. He manages to find this ancient one-story cabin to escape the howling wind and rain. But when he flicks on his flashlight, highly specific details inside start slowly revealing a genuinely horrifying truth. Step 1, the door has a padlock bracket, but it's mounted on the outside. Step 2, the cabin's only window has heavy screws drilled straight into the frame, also from the exterior. And Step 3, the interior walls right near the door and the glass are absolutely covered in frantic, deep scratch marks. It all clicks. The terrible realization washes over him. This tiny, remote cabin wasn't built to be a shelter. It was specifically modified to be a cage, a trap designed to keep people inside.
The sensory details in this source really dial up the sheer claustrophobic panic. The backpacker knows he needs to get out of there immediately, but the storm outside is raging. Suddenly, over the deafening sound of rain pounding on the metal roof, he starts hearing scraping noises moving along the exterior wooden wall. Then, 2 heavy thumps land on the front porch. He freezes. A few moments later, the wood of the heavy front door creaks violently. He can literally hear and feel someone pressing their entire physical weight against the door from the outside. Someone is actively trying to lock him inside this cage in the middle of a massive storm.
And here is where things escalate from terrifying to completely lethal. Before he can even reach the door to try and escape, the glass shatters right behind him. Someone throws an incendiary device straight through the window, and in an instant, the entire room erupts in flames. The heat hits him like a solid physical wall. Knowing the door is being jammed from the outside, the trapped backpacker realizes he has one option. He turns himself into a human battering ram. He slams his entire body weight into the door over and over and over again until he literally collapses it right off its ancient hinges to escape the inferno.
But bursting out into the stormy woods doesn't end the nightmare, not even close. The source details how, the second he clears the door, the backpacker is violently tackled from behind by a screaming maniac. It turns into this desperate, blind, physical fight for survival, right there in the freezing mud and rain, with this attacker actively trying to gouge at his eyes and choke him out. Miraculously, he manages to kick the guy off, and he just sprints blindly into the dark forest while the cabin completely burns to the ground behind him. He ends up surviving the night hiding under some fallen trees, eventually making it to a hospital with second-degree burns, and, as you might guess, vowing to never, ever camp deep in the woods alone again.
Which brings us to Section 4, the reality of isolation.
So, why do these specific stories resonate so deeply with us? Well, I think it's because they highlight the stark dual nature of isolation. The true horror isn't actually being alone with nature. The horror is that sudden stomach-dropping realization that you aren't alone at all, and you are entirely beyond the reach of anyone who could help you. Whether it's a silent shadow unbolting steel stairs below you, or the terrifying voice of a man casually reminding you he knows exactly who you are, the fabric of a tent or the rotting wood of a cabin door is no true barrier. So, I'm gonna leave you with this thought. The very next time you're out in the woods and you hear a branch snap in the pitch dark, who is out there with you? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and seriously, stay safe out there.